then realizing you've had it in you. Whoa! Together.
Let's go, baby. Get over here!
I'm an actor.
Only strong survive.
Welcome everyone. Today we are going to talk about one of the most anticipated action movies of 2026. The movie is called Mortal Kombat 2. It was released on the 8th of May 2026. The director is Simon McQuaid, the same man who directed the first Mortal Kombat movie back in 2021. This movie is a theatrical release, meaning it came out exclusively in cinemas across the world. Unlike the first film, which was released on HBO Max and in theaters at the same time during the pandemic, this second film was given a proper big screen release by Warner Bros. Pictures and New Line Cinema. That decision alone showed how much confidence the studio had in this sequel. The movie runs for 1 hour and 56 minutes and is rated R, which means it contains strong bloody violence, gore, and heavy language. It is not for children. It was produced by Todd Garner, James Wan, Toby Emmerich, E. Bennett Walsh, and Simon McQuaid himself. The screenplay was written by Jeremy Slater, who took over writing duties from Greg Russo and Dave Callaham, who wrote the first film. Jeremy Slater brought a different energy to the story, leaning more into humor and team dynamics while still keeping the brutal and violent spirit of the video game franchise alive. The movie belongs to the action, adventure, and fantasy genres. It is loud, fast, extremely violent, surprisingly funny in parts, and absolutely full of fan service for people who grew up playing the Mortal Kombat video games. This is the second film in what is being planned as a trilogy. The franchise originated from the classic video game series created by Ed Boon and John Tobias for Midway Games back in 1992. Since then, Mortal Kombat has become one of the most famous fighting game franchises in history, known for its extremely violent fatalities, unforgettable characters, and the iconic catchphrase that fans have been saying for over 30 years now, which is finish him. The movie is set during the actual Mortal Kombat tournament itself. If you remember the first 2021 film, that entire movie served as a setup. It introduced the world, the fighters, the mythology, and it all happened before the tournament even officially started. That film focused heavily on Cole Young, an original character created for the movie who was not from the video games. Many fans criticized that decision because it pushed beloved characters like Johnny Cage, Kitana, and Shao Kahn to the background or out of the picture entirely. This sequel fixes many of those complaints in a big way. The most exciting addition to this film is Karl Urban playing Johnny Cage. Karl Urban is famous for movies like The Boys, Star Trek, Dread, and many more. His casting as the arrogant but lovable action star Johnny Cage was one of the most talked about announcements in the lead up to the film. Alongside him is Adeline Rudolph, a Hong Kong born British actress who plays Kitana, the Princess of Edenia, who becomes one of the central emotional characters of the entire movie. Together, these two carry the film on their shoulders. And depending on which parts of the story are being discussed, they do so with varying levels of success. The rest of the returning cast includes Ludi Lin as Liu Kang, Jessica McNamee as Sonya Blade, Mehkat Brooks as Jax Briggs, Louis Tan as Cole Young, Josh Lawson as Kano, Joe Taslim as Bihan, also known as Noob Saibot, Hiroyuki Sanada as Hanzo Hasashi, also known as Scorpion, Tadanobu Asano as Lord Raiden, and Chin Han as Shang Tsung. New additions include Adeline Rudolph as Kitana, Tati Gabriel as Jade, Martin Ford as Shao Kahn, Damon Harriman as Quan Chi, Anna Thu Wen as Queen Sindel, Desmond Chiam as King Jerrod, and Max Huang returning as Kung Lao. It is a large and colorful cast, which is fitting for a franchise that has always been about variety in its fighters. Now let us get into the actual movie. Let us walk through it together, almost as if you are sitting right there watching it for the first time. Before we dive into the story, it is worth taking a moment to understand how this movie came to be. After the 2021 Mortal Kombat film, which was considered a modest success despite its unusual circumstances, the studio decided to push forward with a sequel. The 2021 film managed to earn $42.3 million domestically and $84 million worldwide. That may not sound like a huge number, but the pandemic was still affecting theaters, and the movie was streaming on HBO Max at the same time for free to subscribers. When Warner Bros. Considered the streaming numbers on top of the theatrical numbers, the movie was actually quite successful. Development on the sequel started, but then hit a wall in 2023 when the Hollywood writers' strike and actors' strike brought nearly all of the industry to a halt. The strikes lasted several months and many projects were delayed as a result. Mortal Kombat 2 was among those affected projects. Originally, the film was planned to release in October 2025, but after the delays, it was pushed to May 2026, landing on the lucrative summer movie season opening weekend. Simon McQuoid returned as director, which showed that the studio was happy with his work on the first film, even if fans had some criticisms. Jeremy Slater came on board as the new screenwriter. Slater is known for shows like Moon Knight and The Umbrella Academy, and he brought a more comedic and character-focused approach to the story compared to the more serious and origin story-heavy first film. The production budget was $80 million, which is a significant increase from the first film's $55 million budget. This extra money went into bigger fight sequences, better visual effects, more elaborate sets, and of course, the fees for the expanded and well-known cast. The film was shot in Australia, which has become a popular destination for Hollywood productions due to its talented crew base, government incentive programs, and diverse locations that can double for many different environments. The production used a combination of practical sets and CGI to bring locations like Edenia, the Dead Pool, the Pit, and the Netherrealm to life. These locations are iconic from the video games, and seeing them on the big screen for the first time in a modern live-action movie was one of the things that fans were most excited about. Ed Boon, one of the co-creators of the Mortal Kombat video game franchise, served as an executive producer on the film. His involvement meant that the movie would stay true to the spirit and mythology of the games even while telling a somewhat original story. The filmmakers were clearly very aware that they had a passionate and knowledgeable fan base watching them closely, and many of the creative decisions in this movie seem designed to win back the fans who felt disappointed by some of the choices made in the first film. Plot: the movie opens with darkness. Then we hear the distant sound of drums, ancient drums. The kind of sound that tells you something serious is happening, something that has been happening for a very long time before you got here. Then the screen fills with light, and we are in Edenia. Edenia is a beautiful realm, a kingdom of incredible architecture, lush landscapes, and warriors dressed in ceremonial armor. It is the kind of place that looks like it has been at peace for centuries. But that peace is about to end violently. We see King Jerrod. He is played by Desmond Chiam, and he carries himself with the weight of a man who knows what is coming. He is a strong and noble warrior king, and he walks toward an arena filled with his own soldiers watching silently, because today is the day of the final battle for their realm, Mortal Kombat, the sacred tournament between realms that decides which world survives and which world falls under the control of the winner. Standing across from him, enormous and terrifying, wearing a horned metal skull helmet and carrying a massive hammer that looks like it could split mountains apart, is Shao Kahn. He is played by Martin Ford, a real-life powerlifter and actor who stands over 6 feet tall and is built like a physical horror. Shao Kahn does not just look dangerous. He looks inevitable, like a natural disaster wearing armor. His voice, when he finally speaks, is low and rumbling and completely devoid of mercy or sympathy. The fight between King Jerrod and Shao Kahn is the opening set piece of the film, and it is both beautiful and brutal. Jerrod fights with skill and courage. He is not a coward. He is not weak. He fights with everything he has, and there are moments where it seems like he might actually be holding his own against this monster. But Shao Kahn is not just strong, he is driven by something beyond physical strength. He is driven by the absolute certainty that he is meant to rule everything, and nothing, not courage, not skill, not love for one's people, is going to change that. The battle ends when Shao Kahn delivers a devastating blow that sends King Jerrod crashing to the ground. Then, in a moment designed to be as disturbing as possible, Shao Kahn picks up Jerrod's hand and snaps the fingers off one by one. It is a display of power and cruelty that sets the tone for this entire film. Blood sprays. The Edenian soldiers look on in horror, and in the crowd, watching with wide eyes that have already seen too much, is a small girl, young Kitana. She is maybe 7 or 8 years old, dressed in royal clothing, her face frozen in the way that faces freeze when the mind cannot process what the eyes are seeing. She watches her father fall. She watches her world end, and then Shao Kahn turns and looks at her, and instead of finishing her like her father, he does something more cruel. He decides to keep her. This is the genesis of one of the film's most interesting and emotionally complicated storylines. Shao Kahn claims young Kitana as his own daughter. He will raise her, he will train her, he will shape her into his greatest warrior. And for years, that is exactly what happens. He does not love her, he uses her, he turns her grief and her loss into a weapon and points it at his enemies. This is one of the most genuinely dark and interesting ideas in the entire film, and it pays off significantly in the second and third acts. After this somber and violent opening, the film does something clever. It cuts to static. Then it shows the New Line Cinema logo appearing in grainy VHS quality, like you are watching an old home video tape from 1994. And then, blasting over the speakers, comes Scorpion's classic rock anthem, Rock You Like a Hurricane. It is an immediate and deliberate tonal shift, and it tells you exactly what kind of movie you are about to watch for the next 2 hours. We see Johnny Cage on screen, but not the real Johnny Cage. We are watching a clip from one of his old action movies, a fictional film called Uncaged Fury. And Johnny in this movie within a movie is everything you could want from a parody of a 90s action star. He has Ray-Ban sunglasses, frosted hair, an attitude that is somewhere between a tough guy and a man who has watched too many Chuck Norris films, and he is beating up bad guys with theatrical impossibility. Explosions happen behind him. He says something cool. The crowd in the fictional movie cheers. Then the clip ends and we see the real Johnny Cage. And this is where Karl Urban does something really smart with the role. The real Johnny Cage in this film is not the cool, confident action hero from those old movies. He is a man sitting at a booth at Comic Con, waiting for fans to come and get his autograph. And almost nobody is coming. His banner is slightly crooked. His face says everything without any dialogue needed. This is a man who was famous, who was celebrated, who had the world at his feet, and who has watched all of that slowly fade away over the years. He is somewhere in his late 40s, trying to hold on to an identity that the world has mostly moved on from. He tries to engage with the few fans who walk by. He smiles the smile of a man who has smiled for cameras so many thousands of times that the smile no longer reaches his eyes. He signs an autograph, he takes a photo, and then he packs up early and walks to his car in the parking structure, talking to himself, making jokes to nobody in particular because making jokes is the only defense mechanism he has left. This introduction to Johnny Cage is one of the film's most effective sequences. The humor is there, but underneath the humor is something genuinely sad. Here is a man who built his whole identity around being someone that the world no longer needs. And that quiet sadness underneath the jokes is what makes Karl Urban's performance work even when the script does not always give him the best material to work with. But Johnny does not get long to feel sorry for himself, because waiting at his car are Sonya Blade and Lord Raiden. Jessica McNamee returns as Sonya, all business as always, and Tadanobu Asano's Raiden has the quiet authority of a god who has been watching humanity from a distance for too long and is very tired. They tell Johnny what is happening. They explain Mortal Kombat. They explain the tournament. They explain that Earthrealm has lost 9 consecutive tournaments to Outworld and Shao Kahn, and that this is the 10th. If Earthrealm loses this one, Shao Kahn gets to conquer the entire realm. All of it, every person, every city, every mountain and ocean and living thing on earth belongs to him. Johnny's response to all of this is exactly what you would expect. He says no. He says this is insane. He says he does not know what these people are smoking, but he wants no part of it. He is an actor, not a fighter. Well, he was a fighter back when that meant something, but now he is just a guy with a faded action star career and an empty autograph booth at a convention. He is not equipped for an actual fight to the death against interdimensional warriors. But then something happens that removes his ability to say no. Shao Kahn, watching from Outworld through means that are never entirely explained but feel very much in keeping with the mythology of the franchise, selects Johnny Cage as one of the fighters for the tournament. Not for Earthrealm's side. He summons Johnny and pits him against his own champion in the first round of the tournament, and that champion is Kitana. The way the tournament works in this film is clarified here. The fighters from each side are matched against each other. They are transported to specific arenas, iconic battlegrounds from the Mortal Kombat universe, and they fight. The loser either dies or is shown mercy at the winner's discretion. If Outworld wins enough of these individual battles, Shao Kahn conquers Earthrealm. The Earthrealm fighters need to win enough matches to stop him. Johnny is transported to Edenia for his fight with Kitana, and he arrives looking confused and underdressed and making quips, because making quips is what he does when he is terrified. Kitana arrives looking everything that Johnny is not: focused, trained, deadly, wearing razor fans that glow with dangerous light. She has been raised by Shao Kahn to be unstoppable, and she is absolutely living up to that training. The fight between Johnny and Kitana is one of the film's earlier action sequences, and it is deliberately one-sided. Johnny brings martial arts skills, a smart mouth, and the kind of improvised street fighting desperation of a man who does not want to die. Kitana brings years of elite training under the most violent ruler in the multiverse. She beats him comprehensively. He ends up on the ground, gasping, looking up at her with a mixture of pain and the specific admiration of a man who recognizes genuine skill when it is kicking him in the face. But Kitana does something unexpected. She lets him live. She walks away, and this is the moment where the audience and Johnny both realize that something is not adding up. Why would Shao Kahn's greatest warrior show mercy to an Earthrealm fighter? What is she planning? Back with the Earthrealm team, things are tense. The loss of the Johnny vs Kitana match means Earthrealm is now one step closer to losing the tournament entirely. Liu Kang is focused and ready to fight. Sonya is strategic and analytical. Jax is determined and powerful with his massive mechanical arms, a signature element of his character from the games. Cole Young is there, though his role is significantly reduced from the first film, which was clearly an intentional creative decision to move the spotlight onto more beloved characters. And Lord Raiden watches over all of them, offering guidance while clearly carrying the weight of knowing that if his fighters fail, an entire civilization ends. Meanwhile, back in Outworld, we get our first real look at the world Kitana grew up in. Outworld is everything Edenia is not. Where Edenia was golden and beautiful, Outworld is dark and twisted and built on conquest. Shao Kahn rules from a throne room that feels like it was designed to make everyone who enters feel small and afraid. And it works. Shao Kahn in this film is exactly what the fans wanted. Martin Ford is physically imposing in a way that no amount of CGI could fully replicate. He is real and he is massive, and when he moves, it feels like something dangerous is happening. His performance is not deeply nuanced in the traditional sense, but it does not need to be. Shao Kahn is a force of nature. He does not have a backstory that makes you sympathize with him. He conquered worlds and he intends to conquer more. His only complexity comes through his relationship with Kitana, which is less a father-daughter relationship and more a creator-weapon relationship. And even that has complicated layers. We see Kitana returning to Outworld after her fight with Johnny. She reports to Shao Kahn. She tells him she won. Technically she did, in the sense that she defeated him, but she left him alive. Shao Kahn seems satisfied for now. He does not yet know the truth. Also in these early Outworld scenes, we meet Quan, played by Damon Herriman, who is a sorcerer working for Shao Kahn. Quan is pale and unsettling, draped in dark robes, and he moves through scenes like a shadow that has learned to walk upright. He is the kind of villain who never raises his voice because he knows that is more frightening than shouting. His job in the story involves an amulet, specifically the Amulet of Shinnok, which is a mystical object with enormous power that Shao Kahn wants to use to guarantee his immortality. More on that later. And then there is Jade, played by Tati Gabrielle with real physical grace and emotional authenticity. Jade is Kitana's closest companion, her sparring partner, her sister in every sense that matters. She knows Kitana is conflicted. She knows Kitana has never fully accepted Shao Kahn as her father, and she worries because loyalty to anything other than Shao Kahn in Outworld is a death sentence. This is the world set up in Act 1. Two forces pulling toward each other on a collision course. Earthrealm doing what it can to survive with a roster of fighters that includes a washed-up Hollywood action star and a bunch of warriors with magical abilities. Outworld pressing forward with the certainty of a realm that has done this 9 times before and won every time. And caught in the middle, on purpose and by choice, is Kitana, the princess who was stolen as a child and raised as a weapon, who has decided that she will not be a weapon any longer. The middle section of Mortal Kombat 2 is where the actual tournament unfolds, and this is where the film is at its strongest in terms of pure entertainment value. Fight sequence after fight sequence, each one happening in a specific arena from the video game series, each one carrying weight because the stakes have been clearly established. The first major tournament fight that we see from the Earthrealm perspective after the Johnny vs Kitana opener involves Sonya Blade against Revenant Sindel. This is a significant fight both in terms of action and in terms of what it means for the story. Sindel is Queen of Edenia, Kitana's actual mother, played by Anna Thu Nguyen. In the film's mythology, Sindel has been corrupted, turned into a revenant, essentially a dark, magical version of herself controlled by Shao Kahn. She is no longer the loving mother she once was. She is a killer in Shao Kahn's service. The arena for this fight is called the Pit, a classic location from the Mortal Kombat games. It is a bridge suspended over a drop that goes down seemingly forever, lined with spikes at the bottom. The lighting is dark and dramatic. The fight between Sonya and Sindel is intense and brutally choreographed. Sonya fights with military precision and the kind of controlled aggression that comes from years of special operations training. Sindel fights with a supernatural fury, using magical abilities that Sonya has no equivalent counter to, forcing Sonya to rely purely on technique and determination. The fight ends when Sonya finds a moment, creates an opening, and uses everything she has to send Sindel off the edge of the bridge. Sindel falls, and at the bottom, the pit spikes do exactly what pit spikes are there to do. It is a classic Mortal Kombat fatality moment, delivered in the most viscerally effective way the filmmakers could manage. The audience reaction in theaters has reportedly been a combination of applause and wincing, which is pretty much the perfect response to a well-executed Mortal Kombat fatality. Meanwhile, back in Outworld, Kitana is increasingly struggling with the situation she finds herself in. She knows she is being used. She knows that every fight she wins for Shao Kahn is another step toward the destruction of a world and its billions of people. She has been told her whole life that this is the natural order, that the strong take from the weak, that the realms that fall deserve to fall, but she is starting to feel the lie in all of that. Her scenes with Jade during this section of the film are some of the best in the entire movie. The two women spar together and talk together, and the dialogue between them feels genuinely earned. Jade is afraid. She has not grown up as royalty the way Kitana has, so her relationship with Shao Kahn is more clearly defined by fear. She wants Kitana to be careful. She wants Kitana to not do anything that gets either of them killed, but she also loves Kitana too much to truly argue against what Kitana is deciding to do. Because Kitana has been in secret contact with Lord Raiden. This is the twist that the film has been building towards since she let Johnny Cage live. She is working with Earthrealm. She has been feeding Raiden information about Shao Kahn's plans. She is not just a fighter in this tournament. She is a spy and a saboteur, and a daughter who wants her father's death avenged and her people's freedom restored. The revelation of this storyline adds real emotional depth to what could have been a fairly straightforward action film. Kitana is not just fighting, she is choosing a side in a conflict that cost her everything before she was old enough to understand what everything meant. The scenes where she walks the halls of Shao Kahn's stronghold, performing her role as his loyal champion, while internally burning with the need to see him fall, are some of Adeline Rudolph's finest work in the film. The middle section also develops several other storylines running in parallel. Liu Kang's journey in this film is significantly more impactful than his role in the first movie, where he was somewhat underserved by the script's focus on Cole Young. Here he fights with the ferocity of a man who understands the entire weight of what is at stake. Ludilin brings a quiet intensity to the character that grows as the film progresses. Liu Kang's fire-based powers, a signature element from the games, are used in increasingly creative and visually spectacular ways throughout the tournament fights. Jax Briggs, played with tremendous physicality by Mehcad Brooks, gets several moments to shine. His mechanical arms are both his greatest weapon and a constant reminder of the price he has paid simply for choosing to defend his world. There is a moment mid-film where Jax is fighting one of Shao Kahn's champions in a brutal match that goes on longer than expected. And when he finally wins, it feels genuinely earned because the film has taken the time to make you understand what he has sacrificed. Kano, played by Josh Lawson with the same manic energy he brought to the first film, provides much of the comic relief in the middle section while also getting some genuinely badass moments. His laser eye, an enhancement he received between the two films, becomes one of the most memorable visual weapons in the entire movie. Kano's humor is crude and inappropriate and completely in character. He is a mercenary with no particular loyalty to anything except money and his own entertainment, and yet he keeps showing up when it matters in ways that suggest there is more to him than he likes people to see. Quan Chi's role becomes more significant in Act 2. He is working behind the scenes of the tournament, using his sorcery to give Shao Kahn advantages that should not be possible within the rules of the tournament. The tournament is supposedly governed by laws set down by the Elder Gods, ancient beings of cosmic power who maintain balance across the realms. Cheating in the tournament is against those laws. But Quan Chi does not work for the Elder Gods. He works for whoever gives him power, and right now that is Shao Kahn. The amulet becomes a central focus in Act 2. Lord Raiden possesses the amulet of Shinnok, a mystical object of enormous power. Shao Kahn wants it. If he can take the amulet from Raiden and use it to power a ritual, he will achieve true immortality. And immortality changes everything. Because then, even if Earthrealm's fighters win the tournament, they cannot actually defeat him. He will simply return stronger and destroy the realm by force, tournament rules or not. This creates an urgency in the story that extends beyond just winning the individual fights in the tournament. Earthrealm needs to win the tournament and also prevent Shao Kahn from getting the amulet. Shang Tsung returns, played again by Chin Han, now serving as a loyal servant to Shao Kahn. His role in the first film was as a more independently powerful villain. Here he is clearly in a subordinate position, which the film uses to suggest that his ambitions are not fully aligned with Shao Kahn's even as he carries out his orders. He is sent to attack Raiden directly while the tournament keeps the other fighters occupied. This sets up a subplot where Raiden, weakened and under attack in his Sky Temple, is fighting for his own survival. At the same time, his champions are fighting in the tournament. Tadanobu Asano brings a weariness and a quiet nobility to Raiden that gives the character more dimension than many expected. The big middle act conflict comes when Cole Young, despite his reduced role compared to the first film, faces Shao Kahn himself in the tournament. This is a spectacular and viscerally one-sided fight. Cole has his Arcana abilities from the first film, but Shao Kahn is already channeling the power of the amulet in a way that makes him nearly unstoppable. Cole fights with everything he has and nearly lands a killing blow, slicing Shao Kahn's throat in a moment that should be the end. But the amulet heals the wound almost instantly. Shao Kahn looks down at the blood on his chest and then looks up at Cole with something that might be respect for the attempt. And then he punishes Cole for the attempt in ways that are not gentle. Cole survives, but barely, and this moment drives home for every Earthrealm fighter and for the audience that winning individual fights is not going to be enough. Shao Kahn is moving toward immortality, and unless someone stops that process, it does not matter how many fights Earthrealm wins. The plan that develops from this crisis point involves splitting the Earthrealm team. Some fighters will continue in the tournament. Others will have to go somewhere much worse than Outworld to retrieve the amulet or find a way to destroy Shao Kahn's power source before it is too late. That somewhere worse is the Netherrealm, and the people going to the Netherrealm are Johnny Cage and Kano, with Scorpion as their guide. This is one of the most entertaining setups in the film. Johnny Cage and Kano are both characters defined by their humor and their individual self-interest. So, sending them together into the most dangerous place in the Mortal Kombat universe and having the great Hiroyuki Sanada as their reluctant supernatural guide is a recipe for tonal chaos that the film executes with a lot of energy. Scorpion, still played by Hiroyuki Sanada, exists in a strange place in the story because his personal vengeance arc was mostly resolved in the first film. His inclusion in this sequel has been criticized by some reviewers as feeling unearned, but the character moments he gets with Cage and Kano are genuinely enjoyable, even if his presence in the larger narrative feels like it was added mainly for fan service. The final act of Mortal Kombat 2 is where the film truly commits to being the spectacle it has been building toward for an hour. Multiple storylines converge at once in a way that the film handles with more coordination than its messier middle section might suggest was possible. In the tournament itself, the decisive battles begin. Shao Kahn, now partially powered by the amulet and dangerously close to full immortality, enters the fighting arena himself. He has already had his champions soften up Earthrealm's fighters. Now he steps in personally and his intentions are made clear immediately. This is not just about winning the tournament anymore. This is about sending a message. This is about destroying Earthrealm's best warriors so completely that no realm ever challenges him again. He takes on Liu Kang and Sonya Blade simultaneously, which is not within the rules of the tournament, but at this point, Shao Kahn has decided that the rules only ever served him when it was convenient. He overwhelms them. Liu Kang, fighting with brilliant fire-based martial arts that the film renders in genuinely beautiful visual sequences, gets closer to hurting Shao Kahn than almost anyone else in the film. There is a moment where Liu Kang seems to be winning, where his fire burns bright enough that Shao Kahn's armor starts to crack, and the crowd in the arena watching the fight holds its breath. But Shao Kahn, driven by the power flowing through him from the amulet, recovers and delivers a blow that impales Liu Kang through the stomach. This should be the end of Liu Kang, but it is not. What happens instead is one of the film's most visually striking moments. Liu Kang, rather than dying from the wound, begins to transform. His body breaks apart into particles of glowing orange fire and ember floating upward and swirling. And as this happens, he speaks, telling the assembled fighters and the audience that this is not the end. He says he is going to the Netherrealm to find a way to bring back the fallen. Specifically, he says he is going to bring back Kung Lao, his cousin and fellow warrior who died during the tournament earlier in the film. It is his final act before he disappears, and the line he delivers, "This is not the end, it is only the beginning," is both a statement of character and a clear signal to the audience that there is a third film coming. With Liu Kang gone and Sonya defeated and gasping on the arena floor, it appears for a brief and genuine moment that Shao Kahn has won. Earthrealm is about to fall. And then two things happen at once. Sonya, somehow finding the will to keep moving despite her injuries, crawls across the arena floor to where Kitana has been chained to a statue. Kitana was captured after Shao Kahn discovered her betrayal. He found out she had been working with Raiden, feeding information to Earthrealm, sabotaging his plans from the inside. And his response was to chain her in the arena, publicly, as a demonstration that loyalty to him is the only loyalty that matters, and anyone who forgets that learns in the worst possible way. Sonya frees Kitana, and Kitana, freed from her chains and from the last trace of obligation to the man who stole her from her father's dying hands, turns and faces Shao Kahn. What follows is the emotional climax of the entire film. Kitana versus Shao Kahn, the daughter against the tyrant who called himself her father. The woman shaped by his cruelty, now using every weapon and technique he trained into her to try to take his life. She fights with her twin razor fans, the signature weapons of her character from the games, and the choreography in this fight sequence is honestly the best in the entire movie. It is fast and furious and personal in a way that no other fight in the film manages to be. The fight takes place in the same arena where her father, King Jerrod, was killed 20 years earlier in the film's opening scene. The circular nature of this is intentional and emotionally resonant. This is where her world was destroyed. This is where it will be rebuilt or she will die trying. Meanwhile, in the Netherrealm, Johnny Cage and Kano, with Scorpion's guidance, have been working to retrieve the Amulet of Shinnok from Kahn, the character formerly known as Sub-Zero from the first film, who was killed and resurrected in the Netherrealm as Noob Saibot, a shadow version of himself. Joe Taslim plays this character with an appropriately unsettling quality. Bihan in this form has no mercy and no memory of whatever humanity he once possessed. He exists to serve the darkness of the Netherrealm. Scorpion and Bihan face each other in the Netherrealm in a fight that fans of the franchise have been waiting for. Their rivalry goes back to the very beginning of the Mortal Kombat story, rooted in the deaths of each other's clans. The fight is brutal and deeply personal. Meanwhile, Johnny and Kano deal with Cyboth, the shadow manifestation, which turns out to be one of the weirder and more imaginative fight sequences in the film, as they are essentially fighting living shadow that can appear anywhere and attack from any direction. Johnny Cage's arc comes to its conclusion here. Throughout the film, he has been the fish out of water, the joke, the man who cannot possibly belong in this world of supernatural warriors and cosmic stakes. He has been funny and scared and occasionally impressive, but he has not yet found whatever it is that makes him genuinely extraordinary rather than just competent. In this moment, facing Cyboth in the Netherrealm, with everything on the line, something unlocks in Johnny. His Arcana, his unique personal power that every champion of Earthrealm eventually discovers, finally emerges. And it is spectacular. His Arcana manifests as a shadow kick, a supernatural version of his martial arts technique that destroys Cyboth completely. And then, in the moment that will absolutely be the clip used in every trailer for the third film, Johnny focuses that same power and destroys the amulet. The amulet of Shinnok shatters. And in the tournament arena back in Edenia, Shao Kahn suddenly feels it too. The power he was drawing from, the immortality he was so close to achieving, it disappears. Shao Kahn becomes mortal again, and Kitana, who has just been in the fight of her life against a nearly unstoppable opponent, suddenly finds herself facing a man who can actually be killed. She gets the upper hand. She uses both of her razor fans in combination, spinning them in a technique that the film has been building toward since the moment she used them against Johnny in Act 1. She cuts through Shao Kahn's mask, the famous horned helmet skull that has been his symbol of power throughout the entire movie. The mask breaks, we see his face for the first time, and it is the face of a man who has finally made the mistake of underestimating someone. Kitana and Shao Kahn face each other directly, and she drives both fans into him in a finishing move that is absolutely, definitively, unmistakably a fatality in the truest Mortal Kombat sense. Shao Kahn falls. Edenia is free. Earthrealm is saved. The tournament is over. In Raiden's Sky Temple, the destruction of the amulet restores Raiden's strength. Shang Tsung, who was moments away from killing the weakened Thunder God, suddenly loses his advantage as Raiden recovers. What follows for Shang Tsung is appropriately unhappy. The film closes its major storylines with a sequence of resolution scenes. Kitana is crowned the new queen of Edenia in the arena where her father died and where she just won her realm's freedom back. The symbolism of this moment, the same ground soaked in two different generations of royal blood, is handled with enough emotional weight to be genuinely moving. Adeline Rudolph in this scene does not celebrate with triumphant cheering. She is quiet and tired and grief soaked, which is exactly the right choice. Jade is at her side. The friendship between them, forged in training halls and fear and quiet acts of rebellion, has survived everything, and its survival is perhaps the emotional satisfaction the film needed most. Johnny Cage returns from the Netherrealm. He is changed. He has his Arcana. He has faced the worst thing the multiverse has to offer, and he is still standing, still making quips. But the quips feel different now. They come from a place of genuine survival rather than deflection. Karl Urban plays this subtle shift beautifully. Raiden and the Earthrealm fighters regroup and capture Quan, who survived the collapse of Shao Kahn's power structure, as the cockroaches of the multiverse always do. And here the film delivers its clearest setup for a third film. Raiden announces that they will use Chu-Chi's necromantic abilities to bring back the warriors who died during the tournament. This is obviously a reference to Liu Kang's transformation and departure for the Netherrealm and the deaths of other characters throughout the film. It is a promise that the story is not done and it is delivered with enough conviction that you believe it. The final shot of the film is Kitana standing on the throne of Edenia, the realm that was stolen from her, looking out at a horizon that is genuinely free for the first time in her memory. It is a quiet and earned ending for the character who turned out to be the most compelling person in the entire movie. Character analysis. Johnny Cage is the most complicated character in Mortal Kombat 2 because the film is not entirely sure what it wants to do with him. The idea of reimagining him as a washed up action star from the 1990s who has lost his relevance is genuinely creative and interesting. It gives Karl Urban something real to work with, a man whose identity is wrapped up in a version of himself that no longer exists, who has to find out if there is anything worthwhile underneath the celebrity persona when that persona is stripped away. Karl Urban is doing good work with what he is given. His comedy timing is sharp and natural. His action sequences are well performed. And in the final act, when the character finds his Arcana and steps into his destiny, Urban sells that transformation sincerely. The problem, as many critics have pointed out, is that the script does not always give him space to breathe. His arc gets interrupted constantly by the Outworld storyline, which is the more interesting half of the movie, and the moments where his character could genuinely deepen are often cut short by the next fight sequence. The version of Johnny Cage in this film is notably different from his video game counterpart. In the games, Johnny is arrogant, loud, completely confident in himself even when he should not be. He is the definition of a guy who has too much ego and surprisingly enough genuine ability to back it up. The film's version tones down that arrogance considerably, leaving a character who is quieter and sadder than the source material. This was clearly a deliberate choice. And it is not a bad choice, but it does not always mesh well with the over the top energy of the world around him. Kitana is the film's greatest success story in terms of character. Adeline Rudolph was not widely known to general audiences before this film, and her performance here is going to change that significantly. She takes Kitana from the first moment we see her as a small girl watching her father die and carries her all the way to the throne of Edenia. And the journey is completely believable even through all of the fantastical circumstances surrounding it. What makes Kitana work is that her motivation is always completely clear and always completely personal. She is not saving Earthrealm because of abstract principle. She is saving Earthrealm because saving Earthrealm is the only way to also save herself from the lies she has been living. She needs to destroy Shao Kahn not for ideological reasons, but because she was stolen as a child and she has spent 20 years being shaped into a weapon by the man who stole her. Taking her agency back is not a political act. It is a survival act. And the film understands this about her, which is why her storyline is the one that carries genuine emotional weight. Her relationship with Jade is the other engine of her character. Jade is her anchor to genuine feeling in a world that has tried to make her feel nothing except loyalty to Shao Kahn. Every scene they share has a warmth and an honesty that contrast beautifully with the coldness of Outworld's politics. Tati Gabriel brings quite strength to Jade, and while the character is not given as much material as Kitana, everything she does with what she has is effective. Shao Kahn is what every good villain in this type of film needs to be. He is not misunderstood. He does not have a sympathetic backstory that explains why he is the way he is. He is pure force and pure will directed toward domination. Martin Ford uses his physical presence brilliantly, understanding that with a character like Shao Kahn you do not need to speak a great deal. Every movement communicates menace. Every moment he is on screen communicates that he is the most dangerous thing in the room, the building, the realm. His cruelty toward Kitana, which is never physical abuse but always psychological, always the constant reminder that she is his property, is what makes him genuinely hateable rather than just generically threatening. Liu Kang's growth in this film compared to the first one is notable. Ludilin clearly was given more direction and more material this time around, and his performance is significantly more compelling as a result. The moment where Liu Kang is impaled and then transforms into fire particles and disappears is one of the most memorable sequences in the film, and it works because of the emotional commitment Lin brings to it. He is not dying, he is evolving. And the distinction matters. Sonya Blade remains a character who is well served in action sequences and less well served in quieter moments. Jessica McNamee is a strong physical performer, and her fight with Sindel is one of the film's highlights. But there is a version of Sonya's character that has more depth and complexity than this film fully explores, and it is a mild disappointment that the sequel did not push that further. Cole Young is treated by this film as exactly what many fans argued he was in the first film, a supporting character who exists to acknowledge the events of the previous movie without actually driving the narrative of this one. Louis Tan does solid work with limited material, and the film handles his reduced role without making it feel entirely dismissive. But it is clear that the creative decision to move the spotlight elsewhere was the right one. Themes and symbolism. The most central theme in Mortal Kombat 2 is identity. Almost every major character in this film is dealing with a question about who they are and whether the person they have become is actually who they want to be. Kitana has been shaped by Shao Kahn into his perfect weapon. Her identity as a fighter, as a princess, as a daughter has been entirely constructed by the man who destroyed her actual family. The entire arc of her character is about dismantling that constructed identity and rebuilding herself on her own terms. Her final battle with Shao Kahn is not just a fight, it is the physical embodiment of that dismantling. She uses the skills he gave her to destroy him. She turns his creation against its creator. This is symbolically one of the most satisfying narrative circles in the film. Johnny Cage is the other side of the identity question. His identity as an action star, as a celebrity, as the cool guy with the sunglasses and the quips was always partly performance. And the film strips that performance away by putting him in a situation where performance is not enough. Being charming and funny does not save you in the Netherrealm. Being a skilled martial artist helps, but it is not sufficient. What finally saves him and unlocks his arcana is accepting who he actually is rather than who he has been pretending to be. His shadow kick is not the power of Johnny Cage, the movie star. It is the power of the real person underneath the movie star persona. Loyalty and betrayal are themes that run through almost every relationship in the film. Kitana's betrayal of Shao Kahn is framed not as a moral failure but as a moral awakening. She is not being disloyal to a father. She is refusing to continue being loyal to her own oppressor. The film draws a clear distinction between these things without belaboring the point. Jade's loyalty to Kitana is tested throughout the film. She has every reason to stay loyal to Shao Kahn if self-preservation is the primary goal. But her loyalty to her friend ultimately overrides her fear, and that choice defines her character more than any fight sequence. There is also a theme about legacy and the burden it places on individuals. Kitana carries the legacy of King Jerrod and the entire realm of Edenia on her shoulders. She did not ask for this responsibility. It was imposed on her by circumstances beyond her control. The film suggests that accepting this responsibility anyway, choosing to take it on rather than simply enduring it, is what separates a leader from a prisoner of their own history. The Amulet of Shinnok functions as a symbol throughout the film. It represents the idea that power which is sought through shortcuts and manipulation is ultimately fragile. Shao Kahn wants immortality through the amulet rather than earning dominance through legitimate victory. His near success with it and his ultimate failure because of it underscores the film's argument that power built on stolen foundations is always vulnerable to the people you stole from. The Netherrealm, as a physical location in the film, functions as a symbolic representation of the past. The dead live there, old grudges and unresolved conflicts take physical form there. Johnny and Kano have to go there to find something vital, and to do that, they have to face exactly the kind of darkness that the living world prefers to pretend does not exist. The fact that Johnny finds his Arcana in this place of death and darkness is thematically appropriate. You do not discover who you truly are in comfortable places. You discover it in the worst possible circumstances, filmmaking techniques, and visual style. Simon McQuoid's direction in this film is a clear step up from the first movie. The 2021 Mortal Kombat received criticism for its action choreography, which some reviewers found choppy and difficult to follow due to overly aggressive editing that cut away from impact before the audience could register it. McQuoid has clearly worked on this in the sequel. The fight sequences in Mortal Kombat 2 are better composed, meaning the camera is positioned to actually show you what is happening rather than suggesting it through fast cuts. When someone takes a hit, you see it land. When a weapon connects, you see the damage. This sounds basic, but it is actually one of the more important improvements in the film. The fight choreography credit goes to a team of stunt coordinators and martial arts specialists who clearly worked very closely with the cast. The film features authentic martial arts styles for most of its fighters. Kitana's style incorporates elements of wushu and Chinese martial arts traditions that match both her character's origin and Adeline Rudolph's own background. Karl Urban apparently trained extensively for the role, and his fight sequences in the film benefit from that preparation, especially in the scenes where he needs to convey someone who is good but not supernaturally good, which is actually harder to film convincingly than the magical combat. The film's visual palette changes depending on which realm is being depicted, and this is one of the more effective artistic decisions. Edenia, even in its conquered state, is lit with golden and blue tones that suggest its former beauty and nobility. Outworld is shot in harsh reds and browns and blacks, a world of volcanic rock and shadows. The Netherrealm, when we finally visit it, is rendered in deep purples and greens, a sickly and beautiful palette that makes the environment feel genuinely otherworldly in a way that differs from the other realms. Raiden's Sky Temple is lit in electric blue and silver, suggesting the power of thunder and sky that defines his character. The soundtrack choices throughout the film are both era appropriate and emotionally effective. The Scorpions track in the opening Johnny Cage introduction sets the tone for his character immediately. The score in the Edenia battle sequences draws on more orchestral and emotional musical traditions, while Outworld scenes have heavier and more percussive underscore. The Netherrealm sequence is accompanied by music that feels appropriately uncomfortable and supernatural. The fatalities in the film deserve a special mention. The team clearly understood that this is one of the most important elements of Mortal Kombat as a franchise, and they went for it. The kills in this movie are inventive, gory, and frequently greeted with audience reactions that are half horror and half delight, which is exactly the tone the franchise has always aimed for. Kung Lao's hat, which spins like a circular saw blade and can be thrown and controlled with precision, results in one particular fatality sequence involving a falling body that the Game Informer review describes as causing the audience to erupt in applause. The Kitana fanblade fatality in the film's climax is the most impactful because it is the most earned, coming at the end of 20 years of story compressed into 2 hours of screen time. The film runs at an aspect ratio of 2.39 to 1, the wide cinemascope format that gives the image a cinematic grandeur appropriate for epic scale action. It was mixed in Dolby Atmos, which means theaters with the premium audio format will deliver the sound design in full force. The fight impacts the environmental sounds of each realm, and the music benefits significantly from the audio format. The film was shot in Australia, and the production design team has created sets and environments that feel genuinely tactile and lived in rather than purely digital. While CGI is used extensively for the supernatural elements and the environmental extensions, the tactile quality of the costumes, weapons, and physical sets gives the world a weight that pure digital environments often lack. Critical response and audience reaction. Mortal Kombat 2 arrived in theaters on the 8th of May 2026, and as of its opening day, it holds a 74% score on Rotten Tomatoes based on over 80 critical reviews. This is a significant improvement over the first film's 55% score on the same platform. The critical consensus praises the upgraded action sequences, Karl Urban's entertaining performance as Johnny Cage, and particularly singles out Adeline Rudolph's Kitana as the standout performance in the entire film. The Variety review, while generally positive about the action, described the story as somewhat sludgy, noting that the film is at its best when it is delivering fights and fatalities, and at its least compelling when it is trying to handle its character arcs with the depth they deserve. The reviewer praised Karl Urban's charisma and Adeline Rudolph's emotional commitment, but suggested that the script does not fully serve either of its two main characters as well as it could have. Game Informer gave the film a positive review and described it as faithfully fatal, praising its tournament format, the iconic stage locations from the games, and the choreography of the fatalities. The review noted some weaknesses in the inclusion of Scorpion and Bihan, feeling their storylines were unearned, but concluded that the improvements over the first film were significant and encouraging. The Gamer's review offered a notably nuanced take, calling it a great Kitana movie and a bad Johnny Cage movie, and overall an alright Mortal Kombat movie. The reviewer argued that Urban's Johnny was too muted and passive compared to the source material's version of the character, while praising Rudolph's Kitana and the Jade dynamic as the genuine emotional core of the film. One publication compared the film's structure unfavorably to Guardians of the Galaxy, suggesting that the ragtag team of fighters with their individual quirks and a reluctant central hero in Karl Urban playing a role similar to Star-Lord was too obviously modeled on the Marvel formula. While acknowledging this comparison, the same review granted that the film executes its version of this formula with more violence and more fan service than most of its obvious inspirations. The CG Magazine review captured perhaps the most balanced sentiment toward the film, describing it as messy, campy, and completely ridiculous, but understanding exactly what kind of movie it wants to be. This is probably the most accurate summary of the consensus. Mortal Kombat 2 knows it is a violent, gory, loud, frequently silly action movie based on a video game franchise famous for its over-the-top violence. It does not pretend to be something more sophisticated, and within those intentional limitations, it largely succeeds. Audience scores on various platforms have been notably more enthusiastic than critical scores, which is typical for this kind of franchise film. Fans of the video games in particular have responded very positively to the tournament format, the stage locations, and the fatalities, all of which were elements that the first film was criticized for not delivering fully enough. The reaction to Karl Urban specifically has been warm, with many fans feeling he was well cast even if the script constrained him. Adeline Rudolph's Kitana is clearly the audience favorite performance, with many calling her one of the best additions to any video game film adaptation in years. On the box office side, the film earned $5.2 million in Thursday night preview screenings, a solid number for an rated action film. The opening weekend projections across multiple tracking services had the film landing somewhere between $40 million and $50 million domestically, which would make it one of the stronger openings of the year and would more than triple the opening weekend of the first film. The international tracking also suggested strong performance, with particular interest in Asia given the franchise's popularity there and the cast's international appeal. The global opening weekend was projected to land somewhere between $70 and $80 million. The film was produced for $80 million, significantly more than the first film's $55 million budget. For the studio to feel good about the investment, they will want to see the film reach at least $200 million globally across its theatrical run. And given the tracking numbers and the critical reception, that number seems well within reach. The studio had already confirmed a third film is in development before this one even opened, which suggests their own confidence in the franchise's trajectory. The first Mortal Kombat in 2021, despite its unusual day and date streaming release during the pandemic, ended its run with $42.3 million domestically and $84 million worldwide. The sequel's opening weekend alone was projected to match or exceed that entire domestic total from the first film, which tells you everything you need to know about how differently the two films were positioned and received. The ending of Mortal Kombat 2 is both conclusive and clearly designed to open doors. Let us go through it carefully because there are several threads that the film leaves deliberately unresolved. Shao Kahn is dead. Kitana kills him in the arena where her father died, using her twin fans in the film's most emotionally resonant fatality. This is not an ambiguous ending for his character. He is gone. The main villain of this film is definitively defeated. Edenia is free. Kitana is crowned queen. This gives the film a satisfying emotional endpoint. But the question of what happens next is deliberately left open in several ways. First, Liu Kang did not die. He transformed and departed for the Netherrealm with a stated mission to bring back fallen fighters, specifically Kung Lao. The fact that a major character is explicitly not dead and is operating in a different location sets up a storyline for the third film without being particularly subtle about it. Second, Quan is captured alive at the end of the film. Raiden states that they will use Quan Chi's necromantic abilities to resurrect the warriors who fell during the tournament. This is a very significant piece of information because it means that characters who died in this film are not necessarily gone forever. Mortal Kombat as a franchise has always involved resurrection and return, and the film is leaning into that tradition to give itself maximum flexibility for the third installment. Third, there is a question of Kitana and her relationship with Earthrealm. She is now the queen of a realm that is newly freed from Outworld's control. Her alliance with Raiden and Earthrealm during the events of this film creates a natural bridge to the politics and conflicts of the next chapter. If Shao Kahn's empire does not simply collapse with his death, if there are forces within Outworld who want to continue his legacy, then Edenia and Earthrealm will be natural allies in whatever comes next. The mid-credits and post-credits landscape for the film follows the now standard blockbuster convention of hinting at what is coming. Without going into specific details about these sequences, they establish that the next film will deal with larger cosmic threats, possibly involving the Elder Gods themselves, whose authority over the tournament was continuously undermined throughout this film. If Shao Kahn was willing to cheat the tournament with Quan Chi's help, the question of what happens to the systems of cosmic balance when they are shown to be corruptible is clearly something the third film intends to explore. Greg Russo, who co-wrote the first film, has described the planned trilogy as three distinct acts. The first film was set before the tournament, the second film was set during the tournament, and the third film will be set post-tournament. That description suggests the third film will take place in a world changed by the events of these two films, possibly with completely different stakes than the tournament structure that defined both of its predecessors. Karl Urban's Johnny Cage is set up at the end of this film as someone who has fully arrived. He has his Arcana. He has been through the worst experience imaginable and survived it. He is no longer the washed-up action star looking for relevance. He is an actual champion of Earthrealm, and the third film presumably will give him more confidently written material that reflects this growth. Kitana as the new queen of Edenia has a natural and compelling path forward. Her story in this film was about reclaiming what was stolen. The story in the next film could be about figuring out what to do with it now that you have it, which is a different and equally interesting challenge. Mortal Kombat as a franchise has been through a lot since it was first created in 1992. The original game was a technological breakthrough at the time, using digitized versions of real actors performing martial arts moves rather than hand-drawn sprites. This gave it a realism that other fighting games did not have, and combined with its extreme violence, it became one of the most controversial video game releases of its era, eventually contributing to the creation of the ESRB rating system that still governs video game content labeling in the United States today. The franchise went through many sequels, reboots, and evolutions over the following 3 decades. There have been 2 previous live action film adaptations before this current reboot series. The 1995 Mortal Kombat film is remembered with genuine fondness by fans who grew up with it not because it was a great film by traditional measures, but because it captured the energy and spirit of the games with an enthusiasm that made up for its limited budget and somewhat campy execution. Its sequel, Mortal Kombat Annihilation from 1997, is remembered considerably less fondly. The 2021 reboot was a deliberate attempt to start fresh with a modern, higher budget rated approach that would not shy away from the violence that defines the franchise. The decision to create a new original character in Cole Young as the audience surrogate was controversial and remains a talking point. The sequel's decision to essentially sideline that character in favor of genuinely iconic franchise figures suggests the production team heard the criticism and responded to it. The games themselves have continued to evolve in parallel with the films. Mortal Kombat 1, released in 2023, launched a new timeline for the video game series with entirely reimagined versions of classic characters. The film series is not directly adapting any specific game, but rather draws from the overall mythology and character roster across the franchise's history, which gives it flexibility to cherry pick the most compelling elements from 30 plus years of lore. The upcoming Street Fighter film, mentioned in some reviews of this movie, is another example of the fighting game movie revival that has been happening in the mid 2020s. Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat have always been rivals in the gaming world, and having both franchises producing new theatrical adaptations at roughly the same time is interesting from a cultural perspective. It suggests that fighting games, and particularly the generation of games from the early to mid 1990s that shaped a specific generation of gamers, are experiencing a nostalgic moment of pop culture rehabilitation. Let us talk about the performances in more detail because, in a film like this, where the story is not always as sophisticated as it could be, performances can make or break the experience. Karl Urban is doing something genuinely interesting with Johnny Cage, even when the material is not giving him the best opportunity to do it. He has fully committed to the specific version of the character the film is presenting, a man whose whole identity as a tough guy action hero has calcified into a persona that protects him from having to actually be vulnerable about anything. The sunglasses and the quips and the casual bravado are all armor, and Urban lets you see the wear on that armor without ever making it into something overly dramatic. It is a performance that rewards attention even in the scenes where it looks like he's just being funny. Adeline Rudolph is the revelation of the film. She is playing a character who is simultaneously a trained killing machine and a deeply wounded young woman, and she manages both registers without the performance ever feeling inconsistent. The scene where she stands before Shao Kahn after being revealed as a traitor and does not flinch, does not beg, just stands there with a stillness that communicates everything she has decided about herself and her future, is one of the best single acting moments in the entire movie. She is going to be a significant star. Tati Gabriel as Jade is warm and physically compelling and brings genuine emotional intelligence to a role that could easily have been purely functional. Her friendship with Kitana is the most believable relationship in the film, and a significant portion of that is down to Gabriel's contribution. Josh Lawson as Kano was one of the highlights of the first film, and he remains consistently entertaining here. His character has been given laser eye powers as a new enhancement, and Lawson uses this with maximum comic and dramatic effect throughout. His comedic instincts are perfect for the tone this film is going for, and his chemistry with Karl Urban in their shared Netherrealm sequences is a genuine pleasure. Martin Ford as Shao Kahn is doing something very specific and very effective. He is not trying to be a traditionally acted villain with layers and contradictions. He is being a physical presence that communicates absolute authority and absolute threat. Every time he appears on screen, the atmosphere of the scene changes. He is the gravity well around which all other characters organize their behavior. This is a different kind of acting skill from what the other cast members are doing, and Ford demonstrates it with surprising assurance for someone relatively new to major film roles. Hiroyuki Sanada as Scorpion is used in a way that some critics find disappointing, arguing he is too good a performer to be sidelined in a supporting capacity. But within the scenes he is given, Sanada brings a quiet intensity and physical precision that elevates every moment he appears. The Netherrealm fight between Scorpion and Bihan is one of the better sequences in the film's third act precisely because Sanada makes it feel personal and earned even in a limited amount of screen time. Damon Harriman as Quan Chi is effectively unsettling in the specific way the character needs to be. Quan Chi in the games is a manipulative sorcerer, someone who moves events from the shadows and profits from other people's conflict. Harriman captures this quality well, making Quan Chi feel genuinely dangerous in a different way from Shao Kahn's direct physical threat. Tadanobu Asano as Lord Raiden brings a wariness and wisdom to the character that gives Raiden more depth than the God of Thunder sometimes receives in these stories. His scenes in the Sky Temple defending himself against Shang Tsung's assault give him something more active to do than in the first film, and the relief and renewed power he shows when the amulet is destroyed is a genuinely warm moment. It is worth spending some time comparing Mortal Kombat 2 to its predecessor to understand how the franchise has evolved and where it still has room to grow. The 2021 Mortal Kombat is a film that tried to introduce a new audience to a complex mythology while also serving existing fans. The challenge of doing both things at once is genuinely difficult. It chose to do this through Cole Young, an original character who would experience this world as a newcomer the way the audience would. The concept was sound, but the execution was criticized because Cole Young was not a particularly compelling character and because centering the story on him pushed beloved franchise characters like Johnny Cage and Shao Kahn either to supporting roles or out of the film entirely. The 2021 film also had issues with its action choreography, as mentioned earlier. The fights were technically competent but sometimes visually muddled, cutting too quickly and not trusting the audience to follow what was happening. The fatalities were relatively well received but felt somewhat restrained compared to what fans wanted. Mortal Kombat 2 addresses almost all of these criticisms. It replaces Cole Young as the new audience surrogate with Johnny Cage, who has the advantage of being a genuinely beloved franchise character while still being recognizable as a fish out of water type in the specific circumstances of the story. The tournament is actually a tournament now rather than a build up to a tournament. The iconic stage locations are used. The fatalities are more elaborate and more frequent. And the addition of Kitana gives the film a genuine emotional core that the first film lacked. Where the sequel still struggles is in narrative coherence. There are a lot of characters and storylines, and the film is not always graceful about balancing them. Some characters feel underserved, particularly Raiden, Cole Young, and arguably Scorpion. The Amulet MacGuffin plot is functional but not particularly inspired. And while the film has improved on the first in many ways, the sense that it is a team movie where the team has been assembled from very different and not entirely compatible parts never quite goes away. What the sequel does better is commit to being a Mortal Kombat movie. The 2021 film was sometimes apologetic about its source material, as if it was trying to justify its existence through character depth and world building rather than trusting that people came to see brutal tournament fighting. Mortal Kombat 2 has no such apology in it. It is exactly what it wants to be, and that confidence makes it significantly more fun to watch. There is a genuine conversation to be had about what Mortal Kombat 2 represents beyond its surface level status as a violent blockbuster action film. The franchise has always been culturally significant in ways that go beyond entertainment, and this film carries some of that significance forward. The decision to center the emotional storyline on Kitana, a woman whose entire identity was stolen and reconstructed by a powerful man, is not accidental. Her journey from weapon to queen is a story about reclaiming agency, about the difference between the person you were shaped to be and the person you choose to become. The film does not belabor this point with dialogue or speeches. It expresses it through action and consequence, which is the right way for this particular story to make its argument. The film also engages, however lightly, with questions about fame and identity through Johnny Cage. The idea of someone whose public persona has consumed their private self to the point where even they do not know what is real anymore is a very contemporary anxiety, and the film uses the fantastical circumstances of Mortal Kombat to create a space where that anxiety can be addressed. Johnny discovering his arcana, his genuine power, only when he strips away the performer persona, is a metaphor that lands regardless of whether the audience is consciously thinking about it in those terms. The diversity of the cast and the fact that many of the film's most powerful characters are women and people of Asian descent reflects both the video game franchise's long history of inclusive character design and a broader shift in what blockbuster action cinema looks like in the 2020s. Adeline Rudolph, Tati Gabriel, Ludi Lin, Hiroyuki Sanada, Tadanobu Asano, and many of the supporting cast members represent a world where the heroes of epic fantasy action are not exclusively one kind of person. The film does not make a big deal of this because it does not need to. It is simply the world the story inhabits, and the story is better for it. Conclusion: Mortal Kombat 2 is a film that will not change anyone's mind about what movies can be or should be. It will not win awards for its screenplay. It will not be studied in film schools for its narrative sophistication. But it is very good at what it is trying to do. And what it is trying to do is deliver the most entertaining and faithful live action version of the Mortal Kombat tournament that the franchise has ever produced on film. From the opening moment, when young Kitana watches her world fall apart, to the final image of the woman she has become standing as the queen of the realm that was stolen from her, this film tells a coherent and emotionally satisfying story about loss, identity, and what it takes to reclaim yourself from the people who tried to own you. That story is wrapped in enormous amounts of blood, creative violence, surprisingly effective humor, and the kind of fan service that will make anyone who spent hours at an arcade in the 1990s feel something warm and nostalgic even as someone is getting their spine torn out. Karl Urban brings genuine humor and surprising depth to Johnny Cage even when the script is not giving him his best material. Adeline Rudolph delivers a performance that is the clear highlight of the film and establishes herself as a genuine screen presence to watch going forward. The action sequences are well crafted and clearly improved over the predecessor. The fatalities are exactly what fans have wanted to see in a proper theatrical presentation. And the ending sets up a third film with enough compelling threads that audiences will genuinely want to return. The weaknesses are real. The story sometimes gets overwhelmed by its own scale. Some characters feel underused. The Amulet plotline is functional rather than inspired. The Guardians of the Galaxy comparisons are not entirely unfair. And the film could have done even more with its most interesting relationship, the Kitana and Jade friendship, if it had given that storyline a little more of the time it so clearly deserved. But on balance, Mortal Kombat 2 is a significant step forward for a franchise that needed to prove it could survive past its introduction. It has earned the right to continue. And if the third film takes the confidence and commitment this sequel demonstrates and applies it to a story that spends a little more time on its characters than on its plot mechanics, the final chapter of this trilogy could be something genuinely special.